Week 5 is rapidly approaching, and we got to get these lineups set and get them set quickly. Let's talk about some wide receiver start sits here for Week 5. Hey, what's going on, everybody? Jake, Fantasy Headliners. Hopefully everybody's doing well out there. Talking about some wide receivers today that we're going to start and sit for Week 5, and we're going to try to slightly rapid fire these. I apologize, the video is coming out a little bit later in the week. Real work kind of got in the way this week. Kind of got me a little bit behind schedule, so we're going to get in this list and get into it quickly. Before I do, make sure you head over to the RotoBaller channel right after this video. Subscribe, click that notification button. You don't want to miss the Sunday live shows, last minute weather advice, injury advice, start sit advice. All happens there Sundays, 12 p.m. Eastern, live, and we're answering your questions. Make sure you go over there, subscribe, and check out the great content there also. But for now, let's talk wide receivers, Week 5. Thursday night, you got the Colts at the Patriots. For the Colts, we already know T.Y. Hilton isn't playing, right? He's not going to be out there. He's not starting. If you have T.Y. Hilton, put him on your bench because this week I can guarantee you I can pick his fantasy football score. It will be 0. Put him on your bench. He's not playing. The other guys in Indianapolis, do they deserve consideration, though? Because T.Y. is going to be gone. You got Ryan Grant, Chester Rogers, and Zach Pascal. Yeah, I haven't heard of him much either. But do we trust any of these guys to put him in our lineups? And the answer is probably not, unless you're in a deeper league and you're suffering from some injuries or some bye week replacements. To me, Ryan Grant is the only one that I would start out of the bunch if need be. He has the highest touchdown upside. Yes, he wasn't the most targeted wide receiver last week. However, with this matchup against the Patriots, in which they're going to have to throw and put up some points, to me, Ryan Grant has the highest upside, and he's the only one that I would risk as a flex play only in deeper leagues. The other guys, they had a great, showing last week, but I just haven't seen enough of them, and I haven't seen the consistency enough to trust them this week in my starting lineup. On the Patriots side of the football, I want to take a quick little survey here. I'm going to ask you a question, and if you agree with me, go ahead and just raise your hand wherever you're sitting. I'll pretend I can see you. I'm not going to be able to, but the people that are around you are going to think it's funny that you raised your hand to your phone or your computer. But for the Patriots, am I the only one that can kind of see that this offense may be on the verge of exploding? I can kind of see it coming. Yes, Julian Edelman comes back this week. Do I expect him to come out there and, totally pick right up where he left off a year and a half ago? Probably not, but I do think Julian Edelman is somebody who's going to be used a lot in this game. Usually after the Patriots have somebody wrongly suspended or the team has wrongly, been accused of something, they come out and try to prove a point. This is like Revenge Tour 16 for the New England Patriots, and I expect it to kick off here tonight, Week 5, against the Colts. Julian Edelman's going to be a part of this game plan. Tom Brady's going to make a point of it, and we don't know the status of Rob Gronkowski yet. If Gronk is out or limited, that only helps Julian Edelman going forward, and I'm fine with starting him as a solid flex play this week with wide receiver 2 upside. Josh Gordon, on the other hand, is somebody who I believe is solely tied to Rob Gronkowski. If Gronk sits, I'm fine with starting Josh Gordon as a flex play this week. If Gronk plays, though, and we have Gronk and Edelman both in the game, they can slowly bring along Josh again. He only had 18 snaps last week, and if they're not dying for somebody to eat up some targets, he may slowly be worked in even more. Until that happens, though, we need to watch the injury report. We don't know exactly what's going on with Gronk yet. But if Gronk plays, I'm sitting Gordon. If Gronk sits, Gordon's a decent flex play for me here in Week 5. On to Sunday now, we got the Tennessee Titans and the Buffalo Bills. So we'll start off with the Titans. Corey Davis, Taywan Taylor going up against the Buffalo Bills defense that I don't know if they want to play this week. They didn't want to play last week, but they wanted to play 2 weeks ago, and then they didn't want to play the week. We don't know what you're going to get in Buffalo. This is a total, roll of the dice, whether they're going to come out there and be dominant or they're going to come out there and not do anything. But we're going to talk about Corey Davis and Taywan Taylor. And it's not so much that these guys I have any issues with. I'm starting Corey Davis, but I'm going to sit Taywan Taylor, and I'll tell you why. It's not anything to do with the wide receivers there. It has to do with Marcus Mariota. Now, last week, he threw for 344 yards and 2 touchdowns. Before that, for the season, he'd thrown for 203 yards and no touchdowns. I know he has the potential, Mariota does, but I need to see it consistently before I start trusting both of these guys. Right now, Corey Davis is the clear number 1 target in that offense, and for that reason, I'm starting Corey Davis, sitting Taywan Taylor for now, until we can see more consistent production out of Marcus Mariota. Now for the Buffalo Bills, we'll talk about Kelvin Benjamin and Zay Jones. Have you ever wondered what it would look like, or have you ever Googled on YouTube or something like that, or searched for, a guy playing football with oven mitts on? Well, if you ever have, or if you've ever seen a video like that, it's similar to watching Kelvin Benjamin. The guy can't catch. He's got catch issues. His hands just don't work the way they're supposed to for an NFL wide receiver, and for that reason alone, I'm sitting Kelvin Benjamin because I just don't trust him. Plus, he plays in an inconsistent Bills offense, but that's a side note. Zay Jones, on the other hand, is another kid who's got a ton of potential, but he plays for the Bills, and still sitting him. Falcons and Steelers are next, and this could be a very high-scoring game. Why? Because defense is optional. Neither one of these teams really can play much of it. And we'll start off with the Falcons. You got Julio Jones, who I'm not going to sit here and sell you on. You should start Julio Jones. But Calvin Ridley. Do we keep riding the Calvin Ridley wave? Do we trust him again? The answer is yes. Yes, we do. The guy is an absolute solid flex play with wide receiver 2 upside. Heck, he could almost hit wide receiver 1 numbers again this week if the touchdowns continue. At some point, it has to happen. Julio Jones is going to get in the end zone. I don't think Calvin Ridley finishes the season with 25 touchdowns, but at this point, everybody's skeptical. Julio's going to get his opportunity. I can see it happening in this game. Both of these guys, though, still starts for me here in Week 5. On the Steelers side of the football, you got Antonio Brown and Juju Smith-Schuster. I shouldn't have to sell you on either one of these guys either. The Falcons secondary is decimated with injuries. The Steelers are going to have to be throwing the ball a lot throughout the game. Their defense is not going to be able to stop the offense of the Atlanta Falcons, and that's going to force Big Ben to have to throw the ball more. Juju and AB should get plenty and plenty of volume. Shouldn't sell you on them either. If you have them, you're starting. Broncos and Jets are next, so we'll be talking about the Broncos first with Demaryius Thomas, Emmanuel Sanders, and briefly Courtland Sutton. I have no idea what's going on with Demaryius Thomas. He's either playing through an injury that we don't know about yet, or his give a crap is completely busted. Whatever it is, he doesn't look 100% out there on the field. You saw clips of it all over the media this week where it looks like he's running a route at maybe 50%. I don't know if he's just frustrated and concerned with his own production. He's leading the team in targets, but he's not doing anything with them. Until we can figure out what's going on with Demaryius Thomas, I'm not cutting him. I'm not dropping him by any means, but he is going to the bench and he's going to sit for me here in Week 5. Emmanuel Sanders, though, is still somebody I'm going to start this week for the Denver Broncos. He's still highly productive here in this offense. He's averaged over double-digit points in PPR leagues so far this year. They're going up against the 22nd ranked defense in the New York Jets. And with Demaryius Thomas struggling, I see a lot more Emmanuel Sanders this week. He's a start for me. Courtland Sutton is on the verge. If he's available in your league and you have an open spot, you may want to start paying attention to Courtland Sutton. If anything comes out with Demaryius Thomas, maybe he is injured. Maybe he doesn't continue to produce. Courtland Sutton's slowly going to start to get more and more value. He's not a start for me this week, but he is trending up. For the Jets, the only guy we're going to talk about, because it's the only guy you should consider starting, is Quincy Enunwa as a flex play. And right now I do have him as a start here in Week 5. Listen, the guy put up 4 catches and 66 yards, 10 fantasy points in PPR leagues against the Jacksonville Jaguars. Yes, it's another tough defense, but not quite Jacksonville Jaguar tough. And I see him having a decent game just based on the volume he's about to see. He's Sam Darnold's favorite target. He's going to see the volume, and he has the potential to go in there and get touchdowns for you. I'm starting Quincy Enunwa, but everybody else on the Jets, you probably shouldn't even own them. Jags and Chiefs are next, so you have arguably the best defense in football against arguably the best offense in football. But who comes out on top? It's like the battle of good versus evil, except I have no idea which one is good and which one is evil. That's kind of how it's up for you guys to decide. But what do we do with the wide receivers on the Jacksonville Jaguars side of the football? You got Dede Westbrook, Keelan Cole, and Dante Moncrief. And they're all crapshoots. There's not one guy that you can say is going to be the lead receiver here for the Jacksonville Jaguars. However, Fournette already being ruled out leads me to believe they're going to throw again a lot in Jacksonville. Plus, they're going to have to. If the Chiefs can put up any points against that defense, Blake Bortles is going to be forced to throw the ball. He's already thrown for over 375 yards twice this season and over 2 touchdowns a game. I'm not hopping off the passing, bandwagon here of the Jacksonville Jaguars. The issue is, which one do you trust the most? For me, it's Dede Westbrook this week. He'll be majority of the time in the slot, which is something that has been an issue for the Chiefs defense. But listen, like I said, it's a crapshoot. There's not one guy that's going to stand out over the other. If you have any of these guys, I'm fine with them as a flex play only here in Week 5, but they have high upside. On the Chiefs side of the football, it's really hard to sit anybody from this offense, right, regardless of who they play, because as soon as you sit them, they're going to go off, and then somebody's going to get blamed for it. However, I'm not going to sit these guys this week, but Sammy Watkins we need to pay attention to. He's been limited in practice all week long. If he goes into the weekend limited, this is Sammy Watkins we're talking about. He's not exactly, the ideal, framework of health. If he's limited at all, I'm not starting Sammy Watkins. Tyreek Hill, though, in my opinion, he's somewhat matchup proof at this time. He's not a receiver that needs a lot of volume. He can give you a great fantasy day off of like 2 catches. And for that reason alone, I'm going to keep starting Tyreek Hill. But Sammy Watkins, like I said, if he's limited at all, I'm not starting him this week. I'm playing it safer. Packers and Lions are next, and I'm starting a petition to change the Green Bay logo from the big G to a red cross because everybody is hurt on this team, it seems like, and the wide receiver position is no different. Right now, Adams, Cobb, and Allison all have questionable designations. Yes, it sounds like Devontae Adams will play, and if he plays, you start him. Huge touchdown upside, top target in an Aaron Rodgers-led offense, no doubt there. Geronimo Allison still hasn't been cleared from concussion protocol. If he's cleared in time to start, then I also start Allison. He's more than likely a flex play only for you based off of the fact that you probably picked him up off your waiver wire. But as long as he's healthy, he's a start also. Randall Cobb still dealing with a hamstring injury. Hasn't practiced yet this week, and I'm not starting him this week. He missed last week, didn't practice at all. This injury could be a little bit more lingering than a lot of people had originally thought, and I'm not touching him this week. As far as the rookies with 64 letters in their names, yep, they're too far down the depth chart, and there's just too many other question marks in this offense. I'm not going with either one of them. I look for a little bit more maybe of Ty Montgomery this week than in weeks past. On the Detroit side of the football, you have 3 solid wide receivers, Golden Tate, Marvin Jones, and Kenny Galladay, and you really can't sit any of these guys. It's a high-powered passing offense in Detroit. As much as we all think that Kerryon Johnson should see more touches, they've already come out and said that, hey, he's kind of where he's going to be. That makes no sense to me, but I'm not an NFL football coach. They're going to throw the ball a lot in Detroit, and this game is no different. Going to be at home, no weather to worry about. I'm starting all 3 of these guys in Detroit for their possible upside in that high-powered passing offense led by Matthew Stafford. Ravens and Browns are next, and we have our first hashtag of the show. We're going to throw it up now. Everybody do it with me. Hashtag never Crabtree. Still not going to happen. Still not starting Michael Crabtree. John Brown, on the other hand, is somebody who I am comfortable starting this week. He's the top target in the Baltimore Ravens passing offense. He's had touchdowns in 3 out of 4 games. His lowest point total of the season so far in a game in PPR formats is 13 points. He's been consistent, he's been productive, and I have no issue starting John Brown against a Cleveland defense which is improved, but is still ranked 20th against opposing receivers. I'm starting John Brown as a solid flex play this week, and I have no issues with it going forward. The guy seems totally consistent and is having a rebirth of his career now that he is outside of Arizona. On the Browns side of the football, you have Jarvis Landry and Antonio Callaway. Jarvis Landry, to me, is if he's playing for the Cleveland Browns, he's in your fantasy lineup. The volume he sees is absolutely ridiculous. Dude could go out there and get like 112 targets in a week. Yes, I'm exaggerating. Don't comment down below. I said 112 on purpose, but you get where I'm coming from. He's going to see huge volume, and he's turned into somebody who's actually being looked at in the red zone by Baker Mayfield. If Jarvis Landry plays, he should more than likely, possibly, yes, he should be in your fantasy lineup somewhere. Antonio Callaway is somebody who I'm also going to start this week as a flex play only. His upside is huge. He's the big play receiver in this offense. And if you follow advanced metrics, his average depth of target so far is over 15 yards. So he's not getting a bunch of little dink and dunk receptions. He's going deep, and he's going deep a lot. It's somebody that Baker Mayfield looks for down the field, and he has that big home run ability. He's like old school Deshaun Jackson playing for the new school Cleveland Browns, if that makes any sense whatsoever. I like the matchup. The Ravens defense is strong, but they're tougher against the run than they are against the pass. I can see a lot more passing for Cleveland this week. It's a 20th ranked defense as far as containing wide receivers for the Baltimore Ravens. I'm going to start Antonio Callaway also as a flex play. Giants and Panthers are next. So for the Giants side, you have Odell Beckham. Yep, you're going to start Odell Beckham. You're not going to sit him probably ever, really. No. Sterling Shepard, opposite of Odell Beckham, is somebody else who I'm going to start this week. Yes, reports coming out saying he's questionable and missing practice because he's having a cyst removed in his lower back. Nothing that should keep him out. It's a very minor procedure. He should be out there on Sunday. And I really like what we're seeing from Sterling Shepard here the past few weeks. I was crazy high on Sterling Shepard here in the preseason. I told a lot of people to go out there and draft Sterling Shepard. He came out to start the season and was kind of like underwhelming to say the least. The last 2 weeks, though, 2 weeks ago against Houston, 6 catches, 80 yards and a touchdown, 20 fantasy points in PPR leagues. Last week, 10 catches for 77 yards, a touchdown, and 25 points in PPR leagues. It's somebody who I really, really like this year. I tried to get him in as many leagues as possible. If you have Sterling Shepard, I'm starting Sterling Shepard for the fact that the defense is paying attention to Saquon Barkley in the backfield, and the majority of the secondary is watching Odell Beckham at all times. With Evan Ingram out, still love Sterling Shepard, and he's a definite start for me this week also. For the Panthers side of the football, there's really only one name that is probably really owned out there in the fantasy community, and we get to throw up another hashtag and say, never Funchess, he's not starting this week either. Dolphins and Bengals are next, and typically whenever you have a team playing against the Bengals, you kind of want to start the wide receivers opposite of them, right? They're the 25th ranked defense against wide receivers, but the Miami Dolphins just can't commit to anybody. You got Kenny Stills, Denny Amendola, you got Albert Wilson. We may have Devontae Parker coming back, but who cares? It's Devontae Parker. He's been nothing but hype. And yeah, I'm done talking about Devontae Parker. Anyway, Kenny Stills to me is really the only one that I'm interested in starting on a weekly basis. However, you have to know going into it, he's going to be very big play dependent. He's had 4 games so far this year, and in PPR leagues, he's scored 26 points in week 1, 3 points in week 2, 15 points in week 3, 7 points in week 4. Now, there's other YouTube shows out there that would say this is a trend, which means he's going to have a big game this week, but that's not how things roll in real football. There's no guarantee he has a big game just because every other week he's been having one. It doesn't work that way. I like Kenny Stills this week, and if I'm in a deeper league and I need a flex play, I would start him. But I have tempered expectations just because the Miami Dolphins can't commit to one wide receiver to be the guy that we know is going to get the volume on a week-by-week basis. If you have better options, I'm not starting any of these guys. If you're in a pinch, you have people on bye week or injured, Kenny Stills as a flex play has that home run ability, and I'm fine with that. On the Bengals side of the football, you have A.J. Green and Tyler Boyd. Both of these guys are averaging 18 points a game in PPR leagues this year, and it's been proven that Andy Dalton can supply 2 wide receivers with decent fantasy days. The problem here is the Miami Dolphins secondary is a little bit underrated. They're the 8th ranked defense against opposing wide receivers. However, it is expected that Joe Mixon comes back this week for the Cincinnati Bengals, and if he can get in the backfield and open up the running game, that's going to open up things on the outside for A.J. Green and Tyler Boyd. For that reason, I'm going to start both of these guys this week. They've been consistent all year long, and as of right now, there's no reason to bench them just because they're playing the Dolphins. Raiders and Chargers are next, so we'll start off with Amari Cooper and Jordy Nelson. Which Amari Cooper is going to show up this week? Does anybody have any idea? Anybody at all? Can somebody tell me which Amari Cooper shows up here for week 5? Is it the week 4 Amari Cooper, who had 8 catches for 128 yards and a touchdown? Or is it the week 3 Amari Cooper, who had 2 catches for 17 yards? No idea. He has to be one of the most inconsistent producers from the wide receiver position in all of fantasy football. It's really hard to trust him because his floor is so low on a weekly basis. He can literally go out and disappear week to week. Now, he does have a decent matchup this week. They're going up against the Los Angeles Chargers, who are the 28th ranked defense against opposing wide receivers. So the matchup is there. And for that reason, I'm okay this week with starting Amari Cooper. But I'm worried about it because he just isn't consistent. If you have better options, and there's somebody on your bench, like maybe even a Sterling Shepard, I am more comfortable with Sterling Shepard this week than I am Amari Cooper. But if you have no better options, throw in Amari Cooper. Cross your fingers, close your eyes, and don't watch the game. Just check the box score later because it may be irritating or it could be a pleasant surprise. Right now, though, it's a 50-50 crapshoot. And yeah, that's all I can say about Amari Cooper. Jordy Nelson the past 2 weeks is part of the reason why Amari Cooper's been so inconsistent. Jordy's had 2 great weeks here, and it's starting to trend that way. Jordy Nelson's being looked at in the red zone. He's also being used as a vertical threat down the field. He's not exactly the Jordy Nelson of old, and this isn't exactly the offense in Oakland that Jordy was used to in Green Bay in years past. However, he's slowly starting to develop a larger role in this offense. And as long as it continues to grow, he's going to work himself into a solid flex play week in and week out. He looks healthy. He's not on the injury report. And right now, as a flex play only, I would start Jordy Nelson. For the Chargers, you got Keenan Allen and Mike Williams, who we'll talk about. Keenan Allen, as long as he's healthy, which he's not on the injury report as of right now, which is a good thing. You're starting Keenan Allen. against an Oakland Raiders defense that is 24th as far as giving up points to fantasy football wide receivers. And you're starting Keenan Allen, obviously, as long as he's healthy every week. Mike Williams had a down week last week, but he's still somebody with huge upside, high touchdown upside in an offense that features the pass a lot. I'm going to start Mike Williams also this week as a flex play only. I think we could see a lot of offense going back and forth here in the Raiders-Chargers game. Cardinals and 49ers next, and this game could be absolutely ugly to watch. For the Arizona Cardinals, you got Larry Fitzgerald, and we'll talk about Christian Kirk for a second, but we're not going to spend a whole lot of time. This offense is still trying to figure things out. Josh Rosen looks improved. He looks like he could be a legit NFL quarterback one day. He just doesn't have the weapons around him or the offensive coordinator to really put him in a place to succeed right this second. Larry Fitzgerald is banged up, multiple injuries. I mean, the guy just isn't producing, and it's hard to see. He hasn't had more than 3 catches and 28 yards since week 1, where he had 7 for 76. Still no touchdowns on the year. The offense is struggling to move the ball. Still trying to get David Johnson involved more there. And I'm avoiding the Arizona Cardinals pass offense altogether. I do think Christian Kirk slowly starts to develop more value as the season goes along. So if you're in a deeper league looking for a bench stash, I do think that Christian Kirk and Josh Rosen could turn into something that is more PPR based. He may not have huge number-wise, yardage, but he is somebody who could start getting a lot more targets and a lot more receptions as we get further into the season. But as for week 5, I'm not starting either one of these guys for Arizona. On the 49ers side of the football, you have Pierre Garçon and Marquise Goodwin. And this one is so tough because I had such high hopes for Marquise Goodwin this year. The injury to Jimmy G just absolutely killed this upside. Neither one of these guys I'm going to start probably for the foreseeable future. Marquise Goodwin banged up again. CJ Beathard, more of a tight end type quarterback. I can see a lot more George Kittle and Matt Breida the next few weeks. A lot less Pierre Garçon and Marquise Goodwin. The Cardinals are surprisingly a lot better on against pass defense than run defense. They're the 4th ranked passing defense as far as fantasy points go for wide receivers. I'm not starting either one of these guys in San Francisco, and we need to start looking for other options for Marquise Goodwin. He's borderline droppable at this point. Vikings and Eagles are next, and I can see a whole lot more offense than defense in this game. The Vikings defense has been torched throughout the season. The Eagles defense is great against the run. They're not that great against the pass. They're the 28th ranked defense as far as giving up points to fantasy football wide receivers opposite of them. And yeah, it's Adam Thielen and Stephon Diggs, both averaging close to 20 points a game in PPR leagues, and they are both definite starts for me this week and for the foreseeable future. On the Eagles side of the football, you have Alshon Jeffrey, Nelson Aguilar, and Jordan Matthews. Now, I'm not going to touch Jordan Matthews. That was a big play, busted play last week that made his box score look ridiculous. However, Alshon Jeffrey's on the injury report right now with a chest injury. Still unclear how limited or if he'll play here for week 5. It's something we need to pay attention to. As of right now, I'm going to make these designations based off of him starting and being fully healthy this Sunday. Alshon Jeffrey against the Minnesota Vikings earlier in the season wouldn't have sounded too intriguing. But look what the Rams did last week against this Minnesota defense, and they have been torched for weeks in Minnesota. The defense is not what we thought it was going to be. If Alshon Jeffrey plays, and I'm assuming he will, I'm going to start Alshon Jeffrey this week. He's Carson Wentz's favorite receiver, right? Earlier in the year with Nick Foles, Nelson Aguilar was getting the volume. That's going to slowly start going Alshon's way. However, if Alshon is limited in any way, all of a sudden Nelson Aguilar becomes a sneaky start. We just need to pay attention to the availability of Alshon Jeffrey. If he's a full go, then I'm going to sit Nelson Aguilar. If he is not a full go and he's limited in any fashion, Nelson Aguilar, develops more fantasy value and becomes a flex play start for me this week. Now the one you guys have all been waiting for. You have the Rams at the Seahawks. We'll start off with the Rams. I'm going to sit Cooper. Nope, not doing it. Learned my lesson after last week. I'm not sitting any of these receivers in Los Angeles again. I was completely proved wrong. That offense is on another level in Los Angeles, led by Sean McVay. Jared Goff is looking like an all-pro quarterback. Brandon Cooks, you got Cooper Kupp, Robert Woods, all of these guys. He can supply all of them with a huge fantasy day and still get Todd Gurley his numbers. That defense is elite. There's not a whole lot you don't like about the Los Angeles Rams. I missed on one of them last week. I'm not doing it again this week. All 3 of these guys at the wide receiver position are starts for me for the foreseeable future. Now, on the Seahawks side of the football, I fully expect Russell Wilson to be running for his life in this game. That defensive front of the Los Angeles Rams should make easy work of that offensive line of the Seattle Seahawks. What that's going to do, it's going to prevent the wide receivers from getting deep down the field. There's going to be a lot of short dink and dunk style passes in this game, but they're going to have to throw a lot to keep pace with the Los Angeles Rams. I'm going to go ahead and start Doug Baldwin. I think he gets the bulk of these targets, and all he needs is to be able to break one play, get one touchdown, and he'll give you a solid fantasy day. May not be huge yardage-wise, but he will be looked at a lot trying to get the ball down the field. Tyler Lockett, in my opinion, is very, very big play, home run dependent. Maybe more of a wide receiver 3 in DFS plays as somebody who probably won't be very highly owned, but has that big play potential. I just don't know if I trust it in my season-long leagues, and I'm going to go ahead and sit Lockett and Brandon Marshall and just roll with Doug Baldwin and cross my fingers. Cowboys and Texans are next, and they're going to continue to run heavily on Zeke Elliott in the Dallas game plan. I'm not touching any of the receivers for the foreseeable future in Dallas. For the Houston Texans, you have DeAndre Hopkins, Will Fuller, and Kiki Do You Love Me QT. Now, all these guys right now are questionable. They've all been limited in practice this week, and that's somewhat concerning. DeAndre Hopkins is starting to rack up small injuries, nothing major. If he plays, which it sounds like he will, you're starting DeAndre Hopkins, obviously. Will Fuller, if he plays, if he's practicing by the end of the week, and he's a full go for Sunday, you're starting Will Fuller. Now, Kiki, on the other hand, is completely tied, in my opinion, to Will Fuller. If Will Fuller sits or misses any time, Kiki gets a huge bump in volume. I still like Kiki in very deep leagues. If you're in anything deeper than 12-team or higher, I like him as a flex play as long as he's good to go by the weekend. Also, this could turn into a high-powered passing offense with more options, not just somebody named DeAndre Hopkins. And Deshaun Watson, they can't get the run game going. Lamar Miller basically runs to the backside of his offensive lineman and fall down at this point. So there's going to be a lot more passing going forward. And I like all three of these guys. We just got to get them healthy. Monday Night Football next, you got the Washington Redskins at the New Orleans Saints. So we'll start off with the Redskins. You got Jamison Crowder, Josh Doctson, and Paul Richardson. Now, Paul Richardson's still dealing with a shoulder injury. It's not going to be 100% good to go by Sunday. If he suits it up, though, I'm not taking the risk in starting him, even though it's a great matchup against a Saints secondary that gives up a ton of points to fantasy football wide receivers. The last thing you want is that one player that you put in the game to take a hit and then miss the remainder of the game for an injury that you knew about going into the game. You can't do anything about new injuries, but if he's already injured going into it, I'm not taking that risk. The same thing goes for Josh Doctson. He didn't even show up to practice on Wednesday with a heel injury, and these guys are coming off the bye week where they just had a week to rest up. If he's still not practicing, that gives me, to err on the side of caution with Josh Doctson also, and I'm going to sit him. Jamison Crowder seems to be really the only healthy wide receiver right now in Washington that's worthwhile. I'm going to start Jamison Crowder this week against the New Orleans Saints. Listen, they're going to have to throw the ball. That Saints offense, they get Mark Ingram back this week. Alvin Kamara has been playing out of his mind. This offense can put up some points in New Orleans. They're going to have to try to keep pace with Washington. I'm going to start Jamison Crowder this week. On the Saints side of the football, you have Michael Thomas, definite must start. I don't care who he plays. You're starting Michael Thomas. Dude is a beast. You got Ted Ginn, who's starting to lose looks to Cameron Meredith and Traquan Smith, like I mentioned earlier. Are these guys starting to solidify more of a role with the New Orleans Saints? To me, the answer is yes. But which one it's going to be over the other is really hard to determine at this point. This secondary for the Washington Redskins is very, very much underrated. They're the 5th-ranked defense against opposing wide receivers as far as fantasy football points. And for that point alone, I'm only going to start Michael Thomas for the New Orleans Saints. Going forward, though, if we can see that either Meredith or Traquan Smith starts to develop more into that number 2 wide receiver role for the New Orleans Saints, they're going to start moving up the rankings. So if you have a spot on your bench and they're available out there, you may want to take a stab at one of them. Hope that one of them hits because they could be very valuable here second half of the season. So those were the wide receiver matchups here for Week 5. Tried to cover as many of them in a short amount of time as I possibly could. If you have questions below, try to help each other out. I get to as many of them as I possibly can. But make sure you guys are continuing to build the community. I see you guys interacting down there in the comment section, and I really like to see that. I'm trying to build a positive community over here. A community full of people willing to help each other and really enjoy what fantasy football really is. I really appreciate your support. I see you down in the comments all the time with the love, and I greatly, greatly appreciate it. Giving it right back to you guys. Make sure you guys are liking, commenting, subscribing, and we'll talk to you later. Good luck this week. Thanks. Bye.